Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar in the series. We've just started a few minutes early if you're already in here, so thank you for coming early. We're just going to hang around and wait for all our registrants to show up, and then we'll kick off at 12 or 11, actually. Yeah. Sorry, the sunny Brisbane weather's got into my head.
Hi everyone, I'm Christian van Stom, so we'll be kicking off in 5 minutes.
Everyone that's here at the moment, we've got questions open in the chat room, and we'll have slides and our camera available, so feel free to leave questions and we'll have a support person ready to answer them as you ask questions. And Christian, at the end of our Agile session today, will be answering some of the questions as well, as many as we can get to, but we will be ending hard on at 12, so we want to make sure that we get through our material and make sure that you guys can have some of your questions answered. And hopefully we can share a bit of Agile learning for you guys, especially if there's a lot of businesses represented today that are thinking about, how you can manage your products, manage your services effectively internally so you can deliver the best value to your customers.
Yep. And we're trying to make the webinar as user-friendly and as usable as possible for a wide range of businesses. So we'll be covering scope from startups all the way up to the enterprises. We'll try and go through some of the details, some case studies, and just try and keep it as informative as possible in the short time that we have.
Great, looks like we have a really good amount of people here today. For anyone that's not in Brisbane, I hope the weather's all right for you guys.
Yeah. We're due for some rain.
Yeah, we've got a lot of natural light, which is good. So
it's true.
Oh, and also just a heads up before we start, Christian is feeling a little bit under the weather, but we've got him juiced up on a lot of
yeah, that's right.
cold medicine. So
remedies, Lemsip.
Hopefully we've got you for at least 1 hour for everybody. Awesome. Okay. So. Just got a couple minutes left, or 1 more minute. I won't do a countdown there.
So I'll just say a quick hello to anyone joining us from Agile Brisbane. It's our biggest Agile community here. Had a lot of support from various people over our journey here at Global Payments. So just a big hello to everyone there. I'm sure there's a couple of you that are on the webinar today.
Awesome. Alrighty. I think it's about time we kick off. So let's get started. So hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is the second in the series of webinars that Global Payments has been running. My name is Stefan Nikolic, and this is Christian van Stom. It's Dutch.
Yes, that's correct.
And we want to take you through everything that we do here regarding Agile and what Agile is all about and how that can apply to you in your business and how any size business or merchant or anyone delivering products can use Agile to improve the way they deliver value.
Yeah, great. So sorry, Steph, to just jump in
there.
So over the next 45 minutes or so, we'll be talking you through our guide to building Agile teams. At the end, there'll be time for some questions, and we'll try and get through as many as we can, as quickly as possible. So feel free to send your messages through as we go. But without any further ado, let's jump into today's webinar, where we'll be talking about two main topics. First of all, what is agility? Second of all, how do you build an Agile team? So I'll just jump straight into it. So what is agility? So this will be a quick overview. I'll help to define some of the concepts and principles of agility. This will be drawing on my own first-hand coaching perspective and the context that I've experienced it. It's my interpretation of Agile values and principles. Again, this is something that some people will have experience with, some people will be hearing about it for the first time. So I want to make this as user-friendly as possible. So I'll get straight off the bat and straight into defining what agility is in a no-nonsense kind of a way. So this will form the baseline for discussion, where we'll jump into the second topic, which is probably really interesting for a lot of people, regardless of agility, is how do you build an agile team? A lot of the basis for how you build an agile team is really just how do you build a good, solid, delivery-focused team, right? That gets the work done really quickly and effectively without a lot of overhead. So again, with this topic, I'll be drawing a lot on my own experience with creating numerous teams across a variety of different companies, but especially centered on the agile journey here at Global Payments AUNZ.
And we really want to get across that anybody can utilize the agile methodology. You don't have to be a big corporate business, or you can just be 2 or 3 people. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And so I think what we want to cover enough of the meat of the topic today that it's accessible for people who are even in a startup or a 5-man band operating out of a garage, all the way up to big enterprises. We were really, I think in the Agile community in Brisbane, we're really happy to hear that ANZ has kicked off their enterprise-wide Agile journey, and that'll be really interesting. So that's obviously something big and hot right now that's in the Agile marketplace.
And ANZ would employ thousands of people in Australia.
Yeah, literally. So tens of thousands.
It's a testament to the scalability of the method.
Yeah, true. So when we're talking about agility, the important thing is that when you're a small business and you only got 5 people, everyone is kind of working really collaboratively, communicating really well, face to face, and that cross-functionalism is just something that you are doing day in, day out, because you just don't have the head of this and the head of that to pick up responsibility. But the challenge for even a small company is, as investors grow, as capital grows, and you start to hire more people, sometime, somewhere along the way, that connective tissue of your organization starts to drift out, and you start forming departments and reporting lines, and that real day-to-day connectivity can be lost. And so the core of agility is keeping that connective tissue strong while you grow, while you build your organization, so that everything from a small business all the way up to a large enterprise like ANZ or GPA UNZ still has those day-to-day interactions and cross-functionalism, cross-skilling across teams, so that we don't have those silos developing that you sometimes see.
Excellent. So we might just backtrack a little bit and just get the housekeeping out of the way. So as we mentioned earlier before, my name is Stefan Nikolic. I am a digital marketing specialist here at Global Payments, and I've been here just under a year, but I've been enjoying working under the Agile structure that Global Payments has implemented, and we thought it'd be a really great topic today. So we brought in Christian Van Stom, who's going to be the main speaker today, as he's mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and so I'm the Agile coach for Global Payments AUNZ. I've been working with Agile Teams for just over 10 years in a range of roles, spanning some delivery roles, Scrum Master, which some people might have heard of as a role, and recently as an Agile coach, most recently as an Agile coach for Global Payments AUNZ, where I've been helping to guide the Agile journey for the past 2 years.
Great. And just a bit about Global Payments, just in case you guys viewing don't know what it is. It's a leading worldwide provider of payment technology. We have about offices in 29 countries, I think, and about 8,000 employees, or 8,500 employees. So it's quite a big leader in payments worldwide, all sorts of payment technologies and payment providers. In Australia specifically, the biggest subsidiaries are Easy Debit and eWay. A lot of you probably already use our services, which is excellent. Thank you. eWay is Australia's largest online payments gateway, whether you're for e-commerce and e-retail, and easy debit suppliers, businesses with integrated payment solutions like BPay, Direct Debit, and they're one of the biggest suppliers of those. So I guess you could say we know a lot about payments and a lot about SaaS products. So if we can use Agile, I suppose anybody can.
Yeah, and like as mentioned earlier on, this is a really great space to be in. FinTech, working in an Agile environment is a great sort of melting pot at the moment, especially in Agile Brisbane.
Changes a lot too.
Yeah,
the technology is always coming up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely. So I guess without further ado, I might just jump straight into this thing called Agile.
Yes.
Right. So
let's do it.
So the first topic, what is Agile? So we've got a slide up there. Agile is a mindset described by 4 values, defined by 12 principles, and manifested through an unlimited number of practices. Right. So what does that mean? So first off, I just want to define Agile as a means of delivering value to customers. Right. That's it. It's as simple as that in my mind. In saying that, it's a mindset that was described, as I said, by 4 values and 12 principles in 2001 by 17 co-signees of this thing called an Agile Manifesto, and we'll get to that later on. But so 4 values and 12 principles sounds really flexible, sounds really easy, very non-prescriptive. But the challenging part is that interpreting those principles and putting them into action in your own context is actually pretty hard. Right? So the companies that are successful in being agile are delivering value to their customers every single day, right? So the companies that are learning to do this generally require more structure and start with an agile framework, something like Scrum or large-scale Scrum, the one that we're using, or extreme programming. Those are a few of my favorites. So those are the ones that I've
shown. Can you elaborate on what Scrum means?
No, let's keep it fairly agnostic in terms of frameworks. And in the interest of time, let's just keep it a bit more generic and talk about agility in teams.
Hard to get too in depth.
Yeah,
it's a lot to learn.
That's right. So a lot of companies will need a framework to help get them started, right? Because the initial goal is to get people engaging, putting the customer at the center of the organization, collaborating and delivering that value back to the customer as quickly as possible. But the end goal for agility, once you start using a framework, is to outgrow that framework as you become more agile, right? So it's like a first step on your journey. But setting frameworks aside, keeping the values and the principles of agility at its core, there is an almost unlimited number of practices that the agile mindset can unfold or unlock for you through this process of continuous improvement, right? So I'll dive a little bit deeper into understanding how we create this thing called agility, right? So the first step in that is understanding the customer. And this is always a popular question, right? So how do we start? This thing that's called Agile, it sounds great, everyone's doing it, but how do we get started? So the first step in creating agility is understanding your customer. I'm talking about your real customer, the customers that are paying your company, right? So these are the end users that are using your products, they have jobs that they need to do, and your company is helping them to do that. I also want to make a distinction here and say that this is the group that's the primary focus, right? So there are other important groups like shareholders, investors, and also internal stakeholders that are within your own company. These groups are all still important, but these groups aren't the real goal of agility, right? Even profit is not the real goal, profit is the result, right? Profit is the result of agility, it is the result of the goal in an agile organization of every team defining its success by the value that they have delivered to their real customers every day. That's it in a nutshell. So the first step is understanding the customer. Once you understand the customer, who the real customer is, you're off to a good start. So the second step is understanding the business. What are the goals of the business? Are they the right goals? How is the business structured? And when I'm talking about business structure, right, so some of the smaller companies this might be a foreign concept, right? You've got a small company that there may not be these big structures in place. In the bigger companies, what we generally have, what we call traditional organizations, will have departments. And departments usually have reporting lines and structures. And one of the biggest barriers to organizational agility is the silos that departments can create, right?
What are silos?
So silos it's a great question, right? So a silo is effectively a gap in communication or collaboration that exists, and I'm talking specifically about organizations here, where knowledge exists and it's contained and separate across different groups, and this separation of concerns makes it sometimes really difficult to deliver value to customers, right? Because customers don't come to a business with a departmental problem. They come to the business with a job that they need.
Yeah, customers are going to go up and go, hey, I need specifically your support team to do this for me, but also make sure that they talk to the accounting team at the same time, right?
Yeah,
no one's going to ask that. So it's
that's
going
right.
to be, hey, I just need this thing solved for me. I don't care how you do it.
That's right. And so Department A handing off something to Department B, you can see how that's already going to slow down the delivery channel. It's going to slow down putting value back in that customer's hands. So the key is keeping that drive, that hunger, that passion that you have in a small enterprise at scale and delivering value back to the customer's hands quickly. And when we're talking about agility, we're talking about doing that every single day. So agile organizations are just slightly different, right? So agile organizations put the focus on teams as opposed to departments. And teams are structured around delivering value to customers, right? So generally we're talking about cross-functional teams, and we'll talk about this later on, and self-managing teams. So a question for people who are listening to ask yourselves what are the challenges that your business has currently with the way that it's structured, right? So the structures that you have in your business today, are those structures aligned with delivering value to your customers, or are those structures aligned with making it easier for you to operate as a business, right? So
why do these structures exist? Why do we have these separate teams?
Exactly.
Why do people need to be grouped up together based on their specific skill? Yeah.
So understanding agility helps organizations form a vision for change and start the continuous journey towards improvement. So that leads the business to being able to deliver the highest value to customers in the shortest time, which again is the key to agility. And so what I want to do now is to dive a little bit more into understanding agility, right? So interpreting agile values, principles, and concepts, right? So this is really breaking down the 4 and 12, the 4 values and the 12 principles that I talked about previously. So I want to just kind of unpack the 4 and 12 a little bit, as we refer to them in the Agile community. So first off, collaborating with customers. So when we're talking about collaborating with customers, we're talking about a change paradigm that we're bringing into an organization that isn't a top-down change or a bottom-up change, so not something that's coming from management down or from the workers up. We're talking about an outside-in change. So it's literally about understanding your customer and bringing them into your company. All right, so it's the customer that's driving the change in your organization. Responding to change. So the thing about change is a lot of people say change is hard. I personally feel like the good thing about change and things changing all the time is that they're changing all the time, right? So yeah, it's kind of like if a change comes through from the customer that isn't your cup of tea, it's okay, because the next change that comes through might be just what you're after. Right? So it's about staying optimistic and seeing the bright side of things. Fast, right? So a key to agility is the speed. So when you're comparing it to traditional kind of project management methodologies, no matter what the iteration length is in Agile, because we talk a little bit about iterations and cycle time, which is generally in the 1 to 4 week range. no matter what your length is in terms of iteration, it's going to be faster than anything you were doing before in most organizations. Agile's preference is certainly to the shorter time scale. So we're talking about highest value in the shortest possible time. So if you can do it faster, always be striving to do things faster and be giving it back to the customer sooner. We try to keep it simple. So scope at any point will be smaller than before. And it's really the art of starting less in order to finish more. Right? Yeah. So we're not about having multiple balls in the air, multiple projects and portfolios of work. We're about focusing on the key objectives that we need to solve and getting those things done.
Rather than sort of focusing on how you're going to get something done, you can just focus on getting it done.
Yeah, that's right.
Rather than trying to navigate around structures.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So then the other concept that I mentioned before, which is continuous improvement. So in Agile, one of the key concepts is checking in retrospectively from time to time. Checking in with the team, checking in with each other, running experiments, using empirical evidence from the work that you've done and the things that you've succeeded with, and constraint-based learning. And what that means is, rather than just focusing on generic team learning, focus on the learning in your teams that will enable them to remove a constraint, right? So if analysis is a challenge for your team, focus on that type of learning. If user experience is a challenge in your team, focus on that type of learning, especially for the specific individuals in your team that could really benefit from learning that as a new skill.
So it's sort of relying on the
skill set.
It's sort of relying on, it's fair to say that it relies on the fact that people, anyone that you have in your business, they all want to do a good job. Everyone inherently wants to be able to do a good job and learn how to do something better. Yeah. Nobody wants to be stuck doing just one thing.
Well, in my experience, all teams want to deliver, right? That's something that I'd say all teams have in common, is that they want to deliver. The challenge is navigating some of those internal mechanisms and structures that we have in place in some organizations that make delivery a challenge. Right, so self-managing teams is something that flows on really well from that discussion point. So the foundation of organizational agility is a self-managing team. I'll talk about distributed leadership a bit later on as well. In this fast-paced world where customers want things now and they want them ready and they want them working and they want good quality, we don't have time for centralized decision-making. Right? Teams need to be empowered. They need to have the capability, the capacity, the functional skill sets in order to be able to make effective decisions on the fly.
And who else would know better than the day-to-day teams that are working on the actual code?
Yeah, that's right. But as with anything, too much freedom can be a challenge for a team, right? So it's about helping the team to make the right decisions and to work within a safe environment.
Okay.
One of the keys of agility is prioritization, right? So another question to ask yourselves as an organization, is the number one priority of each individual person or team in the organization the same as everybody else in that organization? Because one of the key concepts in agility is that prioritization is shared, and the value to the customer is the determining factor for how things are prioritized. We should have shared priorities across teams and across the organization. Another couple of ones, so sustainability. We want to be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. We don't want to be burning people out, and we want to make sure that we're delivering value, but we're also delivering it in a sustainable way. And then finally, technically excellent. So this continuous improvement paradigm touches everything, but it also touches the technical aspect of what we do in our job. So we're continuously trying to become better and better craftsmen at what we do.
Great. So just before we get to the next slide, just a reminder for everyone viewing, we haven't got a lot of questions in about Agile specifically, so feel free in the top right corner, I think in the window, you can ask a question at any time, and we'll be having people collect them, and just in case you want Christian to go over anything at the end, because there is quite a lot of content to this, and this is only just scratching the surface of it.
Yeah,
I want to make sure that you guys understand where you can sort of jump off from with this and what helps. So
yeah.
On to the next one.
Cool. So now that we have a bit more of a baseline understanding of what Agile and what agility is, the next important concept is culture, right? And building an Agile culture. So in order to build the type of culture where agility can thrive, some key concepts that I'd like to talk about. Firstly, educate everyone, right? Because we're all going on this journey together. We're all in this together. And common knowledge levels and shared understanding can remove the fear of the unknown. And that's generally the first challenge when you're entering into a change paradigm like an Agile journey. Have open discussions and drive out fear in the workplace. So create a safe work environment where people can question and can get answers to their questions.
That's really important, is people should not be afraid to go, why, regarding certain things.
Yeah,
why
exactly.
are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it that way?
Yeah, that's right. The decisions
that,
yeah, exactly. And the decisions that we're making or the changes that we're going through need to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, right? Like, we need to be doing this for a logical, empirical reason that is going to deliver value to the customer at the end of the day. And if it isn't, anything that isn't delivering value to the customer is something that we should really be asking ourselves whether there's any value in doing it at all.
Right.
So after that, selecting a cadence. So a cadence is coming back to that topic that I mentioned before around iteration, right? So a cadence is essentially what it becomes our feedback loop, right? So this is the period. In project terms, this is kind of our deadline. And generally in Agile, we're saying 1 to 4 weeks. So a lot of organizations, and Global Payments AUNZ is no different, working on a 2-week cadence. And what that means is that by having a cadence, everyone in the organization who's following that cadence is planning their work at the same time, is delivering their work at roughly the same time, and then is retrospecting and continuously improving on their process and their product delivery around the same time. And it really feeds in well with prioritization. So if we're all working on the same priorities for the same cadence, then it helps to align our value delivery.
So it means anyone can go talk to anybody else and go and know that when they're talking to them, they understand what they're talking about, like, because they know that everyone's synced up in the same projects.
Well, that's exactly right. And when everyone's working on the same priority, the idea of a disruption or a distraction or an interruption doesn't exist, right? Because how can I possibly interrupt you if we're both working on the same highest priority thing? So all of a sudden, one of these barriers for collaboration is removed because we're all working on the same thing. We all have the same goals in mind, the same customers, and trying to help them to solve the same problems.
Great.
So once you've selected a cadence, my next piece of advice is to embrace retrospectives. If you're doing nothing else Agile, at least try retrospectives. I'm sure you'll like them. They're really great for creating this feedback loop, and this is what really enables that continuous improvement. So no matter how good or how horrible things are going in your current structure, in your current environment, if you're having retrospectives, things can always improve, right? And really all it is a fancy word for getting the whole team in a room together and getting their cards on the table in an open forum and discussing ways that we can improve. Things that we've done well, things that we can improve on, and experiments that we can try in the future that will help us move towards that perfection goal.
Great.
So strive for transparency. This is a big key in agility, is transparency. Strive for it, and only then, once you get your transparency, will you really understand the root of your improvement opportunities, right? Understand your team competency, right? So team competency and cross-functionalism and learning really intersect. Sorry, I just pumped the microphone.
That's right.
Intersect really nicely with each other, and building out something like a competency framework where we understand what people's key skills and strengths are, and where their opportunities for improvement or learning are, really helps the team to own its balance.
So break that down. It's basically just a table with everyone in it, and sort of like a heat map that says like, here are some areas you can easily identify weaknesses in a team.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not about criticizing, hey, you're worse than me. It's about going, well, how do we bring people up to, you know, the level of others and make sure that it's the same across the board.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. And the great thing about customers is they come up with new challenges every day, right? So this isn't at all an assessment of the team in terms of how good or how great they are. This is an assessment of how well our current skill sets are suited to solving problems for our customers. And because customers are always coming up with new challenges, because the marketplace is always changing, it's important that the team is always learning new things so that we can solve these new problems as they arise.
Correct.
Encourage volunteering within your organization. This is probably one of the key things, right? Because there's going to be people in your organization, no matter how big or how small. Some people who are really you know, the change drivers, the people who are really on board, or even just individuals who are passionate about specific things, or teams that are really keen on particular knowledge areas. Empower your volunteers and embrace volunteerism. Don't get too bogged down in the challenging conversations that you have as distractions on your way through, but definitely embrace volunteerism because that'll help you move faster. The biggest one, I think, for me is just be honest about the motivation and be honest about the fact that this is a change that we're going through as an organization. This is something that we're doing. And the reason for that, the motivation for that is so that we can deliver more value to our customers, right? Putting the customer at the center of your organization is a noble idea, right? And it's a challenging strategy for an organization to undertake. So don't have any qualms or fears about being honest and open about that with your people. Understanding the dynamics of change is a big one, right? Because a lot of people will say change is hard, but my understanding of change is that it impacts us all in different ways and at different times, but it follows normal themes, right? So there's the general initial thing, which is, hang on, this is something that's foreign to me and can cause fear. And we want to drive that out by having open, honest conversations and work our way through to understanding adoption and acceptance over time. So then that brings us kind of to the end of the first topic of what is agility. And I hope that's kind of helped everyone to form the baseline, because the next thing that I want to jump into is something that I'm personally really passionate about, which is building teams, and specifically building agile teams. So in summary, agility is a mindset that focuses on delivering the highest value to the customer in the shortest time. Simple as that.
And sort of to elaborate on value, is that to any customer, any particular?
Well, the primary focus is those real customers who are paying your company money and need their problems or their jobs to be solved by your company, by your organization.
Right.
They're the primary focus. Then there's additional stakeholders, etc. around that, but the primary is the real external customer, the end user of your product. Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into creating agile teams. So what we're talking about with an agile team is we're talking about creating a real team, right? And we're talking about a group of people who just happen to share the same location and sit next to each other. I'm talking about, if you've ever been in a sporting team, that team where it feels like, by being a member of that team, you feel exponentially bigger than yourself, right? Like you can achieve greatness, right? Like, you know, I'm talking about like, you know, that sporting team on the weekend that's down 4 goals to zip and somehow comes back in the last minute to win the match or whatever. So in creating agile teams, the first thing that I want to talk about is, so we're just referring to the slide, some of the team dynamics. So firstly, from a lot of studies that that.
Sorry, just to elaborate on this, it's quite a big chart, so we don't want to confuse everyone. What do you call this one? It's the team pizza, right?
All right. So on the outside with the the semicircles, we've got the team pizza, and then on the left-hand side in the blue, we've got your standard team dynamics, which are feeding in from various studies. So
we've opened up the pizza.
We have opened up the pizza.
Great.
And it's getting close to lunchtime too, so it's a dangerous topic. So first of all, stable teams are 60% more productive, right? So, and 60% of the variation in the team effectiveness is in the design of the team.
And this is data pulled from the Agile sort of.
Yeah, this is kind of canonical evidence from Esther Darby and various organizations, Agile coaching institutes, and that kind of thing. So 60% of the variation in the team effectiveness is in the design of the team, 30% is in the way that the team is launched. Right? So that's probably a big eye-opener for people. We didn't realize how much of an impact the launch of a team actually has. And then 10% is coaching.
Sorry, when you say launch team, you mean build, like starting a team fresh?
Yeah.
New hires or new employees?
Yeah, exactly. Once that team effectively becomes a team, once it's announced and it's launched itself, that has a huge impact on the way the team goes forward, right? Yeah. Because it's those early days which have a big impact on the culture of the team. But don't fear too much if you do get off to a bad launch, because we can always, through continuous improvement and building a healthy culture, we can always improve. So I'll come back into some of that a bit later on. So then that's team dynamics, right? I don't want to dive too deep into team dynamics, but I just wanted to lay that out there so it's a baseline we can talk to. Then adding my own experience to this, I just wanted to talk a bit more about this team pizza, right? This is something that I came up with. And I don't mean the concept that some people might have heard, that the right size for a team is a team that can be fed by a pizza, which is also a great concept, but not one that we're talking about. So for me, the team pizza is a concept that defines a finite but dynamic range of features that are at play in any team. And I like to call these slices, right? Very creative. So now the assumption is that one slice is most important, right? And the one that people most usually pick on is co-location. They'll say, oh, well, our team isn't working very well and it's because we're not co-located. But my opinion is, and my observations are, that the reality is that it's the entire team pizza that matters, right? And so when I'm talking about the slices, specifically, I'm talking about teams that are self-managing, cross-functional, co-located, as I've already mentioned, long-lived, and teams that have shared behaviors, shared goals, and then there's this X factor that, I like to call.
Let's try and debuzz that. What is an X factor? You mean
it's another word for team gel.
Yeah.
Right. So
this is the bonding factor.
Yeah. It's that shared.
Everyone sort of gets along. But
that's right. It's that shared culture, and it's that factor that teams have that are really working well together, where they seem to be able to get a lot of work done and deliver a lot of value. All right. So so the point of that is that if one slice is no longer in existence, like co-location, which you have a team member in Melbourne and the rest of the team's in Brisbane, for example, it's the job of the rest of those slices to become bigger and to make the team whole again, right? So if you don't have a co-located team, don't worry so much about co-location. Obviously, try and virtualize that team member as much as you can by embracing technology, but also shared behaviors, shared goals, and continuous or at least frequent communication can help to remove that divide. So now that we're starting to get a common understanding of the dynamics at play in teams, I want to change tack slightly and talk about the importance of teams for agility, right? So teams are the core building block for organizational agility. Team structures have a huge impact on the outcome for your organization, right? Not just for the teams themselves, but for the organization as a whole. The teams are really key for managing stakeholder relationships. They have a shared work product. They have interdependent work, shared responsibility, and coming back to this topic that I raised before of distributed leadership. So it's really up to the team to figure out how they work best together, and there's the challenge for leaders in the organization to help the teams to learn how to become self-managing over time. But one of the things that really helps teams is a set of working agreements. A lot of Agile teams have a set of working agreements which helps them to resolve any conflicts as they occur, and obviously going through a change paradigm like this, there will be some conflict. Conflict is healthy as long as it's moving the team forward, as long as it's productive and delivering value to the customer. So
if there is conflict, how do you sort of get everyone on board after a period of time? How do you relay those concerns, I guess?
Well, yeah, I could probably spend a whole hour talking just about that, but in a nutshell, retrospectives are really helpful for resolving conflict within teams, setting the customers.
It's like a ritual, optimistic airing of grievances, but also positives, right?
Yeah. But the key, I think, a lot of people will agree in texts on this, that the key to resolving conflict is empathy. Right? But let's not dive too deep into that right now, if you don't mind.
No worries.
So, as I said earlier, traditional organizations are managed through departments with reporting lines for control and communication, or words to that effect. In practice, as I said, the organizational structures tend to create silos which can hinder decision making. Silos aren't good for agility. Agile organizations thrive on distributed leadership, collaboration, face-to-face communication, like we're doing now, and situational learning. So that's learning in your context. So not just reading a textbook, it's sitting next to each other at the same screen, learning how to do something new.
And teaching is also one of the best ways of learning as well.
Exactly.
It's two-way.
Yeah, totally. So Agile teams are a key enabler to making this happen. So then I just wanted to move on a little bit more into the self-managing teams and cross-functional teams. So the three key common links between cross-functional and self-managing teams are trust, commitment, and accountability. So in order for Agile teams to thrive, they need to exist in a culture that supports these concepts. For self-managing teams, trust means authority to design, plan, and execute their own work, for example, right? For cross-functional teams, trust means the team has the ability to deliver end-to-end value to its customers. Now, this requires trust from the organization and from leaders that a team that is learning new things is able to deliver end-to-end value to the customers. And if they aren't quite there yet, then they're empowered through safety to learn these new things and be able to deliver end-to-end value to customers over time.
Right. It's like the company has it back, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So then, moving on from there, this is sort of like, I think probably there's a few people, there's probably a number of people out there who are thinking, well, this is great. We've got these real teams that are like sporting teams, and once we have them, we'll have this awesome organization that will just move forward rapidly and deliver value to the customer. But what if I don't have those teams, right? What if I'm like everybody else in the world and I have a team that has dysfunctions, right? So the
real world.
Yeah. So there's a model by a guy called Patrick Lencioni. Lencioni, anyway.
Apologies to you.
That's right. Sorry, that's the cough. And he built a model called the 5 dysfunctions of the team, right? So, and you can see this on the slide. I think it's slide 11, creating agility. And you can see that it starts with an absence of trust, builds through a fear of conflict, to a lack of commitment, acceptance of accountability, and inattention to results, right? And then, so these primary dysfunctions are visible to an outside observer through things like invulnerability, artificial harmony, ambiguity, low standards, status and ego. moving up the model, right? So I don't want to dive too deep into that right now, but it's definitely something worth picking up and reading, because I personally found it a really helpful way of managing through those dysfunctions that all teams have and working through to a functional state, which helps move it more into an agile team. So the good news is every team, no matter how great or how small, requires continuous effort and improvement to remain functional. So if you have a dysfunctional team, you're not alone. Agile teams are no different. Agile is not a silver bullet that you're just going to, out of the box, have these great teams that are going to deliver value straight away. But the good news is that Agile principles and frameworks enable us to create a culture in an organization that supports the growth of healthy team dynamics. And that's really the key. So then I've just included as well a self-managing team adoption roadmap, which will help organizations that are planning to go through this type of transition, kind of a roadmap of where you can start and where you can hope to end up. And
we're recording this webinar for later, so yeah, if you do want to go back over some of these images, it'll be on record.
Yeah, feel free. So then I'll just moving on from the team model. I just wanted to kind of summarize by saying, as the team progresses, ownership and responsibility will hopefully transfer to the team over time. And then the self-design process of the team, which is kind of a high maturity thing, is something that can really help to have a powerful launch for a team. If they're the ones who created their team membership themselves, that can be really strong. But coming to this slide and this point brings us to the end of the second topic, which is how do you build an agile team? So in summary, trust, commitment, and accountability, and continuous improvement. Right? So being there with the team on the journey, retrospective learning, pushing through to healthy conflict, should hopefully, through empathy across teams and through building different skill sets and competencies, we should be able to build out a real agile team delivering value.
Really moving from basically being told what to do to telling other people how it should be done. Or
yeah, like,
is that a simple way to put it?
It's kind of putting the decision making back into the hands of the people who are doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. So
that makes sense.
Well, it does, right? Especially these days where 97% of people are educated. Right? So we're all in a position where we're capable of making decisions. We just need to be empowered and have a safe framework to work within.
Mm.
Right, so then moving on from teams, and I hope that's covered off the main meat of that subject for everyone. I just wanted to take you quickly through our case study for global payments.
So we've just got about maybe a minute left until question time, like a couple minutes. So yeah, now's a good time if you guys have any questions, start dropping them in through your browser, and we'll start answering afterwards.
Okay. So I won't dive too deep in the journey in the interest of times, but as you can see on slide 13, we kicked off our Agile journey about 3.5 years ago at Global Payments AUNZ, and we kicked it off initially at EasyDebit with 2 Scrum teams as a pilot. The main call out that I'd make is that 3.5 years it's a long-term investment from transitioning from a more traditional organisation to an agile organisation. And we've certainly learned a lot about ourselves, about our organisation, about our teams and our team dynamics, and especially about our customers along the way. Moving on from there, I just wanted to share with everyone our agile vision, so our vision statement for agility, which is teams that are as reactive as possible to the changing needs of global payments customers. So Global Payments AUNZ Agile Vision consists of continuous pace of features, continuous improvement of process and quality, shared priorities across the business and delivery teams, resilience to changing requirements, and focusing on developing a learning mindset. So this is a vision statement that I created in collaboration with Mark Healy, our managing director, and it's been our guiding Agile. It's been guiding our Agile adoption ever since about January 2016. So I hope this is an example that those who are considering their own first steps into agility can take and use.
All right. Excellent. Thanks so much, Christian. I hope this has been very insightful for everybody. Now I might look at some of the questions that we've got. I've actually got a few here from our lovely assistant. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening in. So let's see what we have here. Our first one, how did you become an Agile coach?
How did I become an Agile coach?
Are Agile coaches born, or are they created? Or?
Well, yeah, I guess this one's an interesting question. So when I first was introduced to Agile was back in 2006, right? So this is kind of 5 years after it was kind of first created and written down on paper in the Agile Manifesto. At that time, I was working with a whole range of teams. We were fortunate enough to bring a really experienced Scrum Master from the Agile community in Sydney, a guy called Alan Goldstein, who's quite well known. He's one of the coordinators of Scrum Australia. He came into our organisation and helped the organisation that I was with at the time, helped to start and kick off the Agile journey for that organisation. As a result, I picked up a lot of things from him. I started to do some more situational learning and became a Scrum Master over time. From there, I moved on into like another role at a different company. And from there, just kind of grew more experience, and over time became comfortable to a point that I could not only take responsibility for teams, but take responsibility for the organisational agility.
Excellent. This was a really good question that's sort of come up. Why is the emphasis all about creating value for the customer? In any organisation, surely there's stuff that you need to do internally that actually indirectly improves the value. So, different processes need to be improved internally, different systems. How does that factor in to delivering value?
Yeah, that's great. So, delivering value to the customer doesn't make any of the BAU work go away.
BAU being business
as usual work, right? It doesn't make any of your efficiency work or any of your refactor work go away or any of that type of thing. But by focusing on delivering value to the customer as a priority, you're ensuring that you have an effective business relationship with the marketplace that will hopefully keep you sustainable and up to speed with the marketplace and its developments, while at the same time you're able to prioritize those things that you need to do internally so that you can remain effective for the customer over the longer term.
So is it more like if A then B type of scenario, saying, well, to deliver that value we need to improve these pieces, and they factor into that?
So delivering value to the customer is all about creating an idea of abundance, right? In a big organisation, there's always hundreds or if not thousands of things that you can do at any given moment in time, right? But by delivering value into the customer's hands frequently, the chance is that delivery and frequent delivery will generate space in the organisation to complete some of those kind of BAU or business as usual tasks that need to be done and give you the breathing space you need as an organisation to be continuously chipping away at some of that challenging longer term work while still delivering value to that end user.
So it's trying to avoid the issue where you need to stop one thing to start another.
Yeah, correct.
Great. So who is in an Agile team? This is quite a high-level question. Are there any key roles in one? So what would a typical Agile team be made up of if you had to use, I guess, traditional?
So it comes back to that point that I made earlier about teams in an Agile organization are structured around delivering customer value, right? So the short answer to that question is generally Agile teams are quite small, right? Generally a team would be less than 9 people, So 9 would be about the maximum for an agile
One
team.
slice of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you have more than 9 people, that's great. You just end up with 2 agile teams, right? And then if you have more, you just build more and more teams, right? The reason why we have small teams is so that we can hopefully focus on delivering smaller pieces of value, which are going to hopefully take less time to deliver, and means that we can deliver more things more frequently.
Like when they say break up a big list of goals into tiny little doable pieces.
Yeah, that's right. But so who is in an agile team is anyone that is required in order to deliver end-to-end value back to the customer, right? So effectively, that means we're looking for teams that don't need to hand work over the wall to somebody else in order to get the job done. So we're looking for teams that are able to take ownership for that full end-to-end delivery.
Great. So yeah, it's not relying on another team.
Yeah.
Sure
So if I look at some of our agile teams here, we've got people in our agile teams that span marketing, Salesforce, web development, software development, analysis, test, design, and customer support. So we managed to do all that and stay under the 9 kind of, right-sized team.
That's true. Great.
In terms of any roles, typically within the team we don't define specific specialization roles, and we just let the team work through retrospectives and figure out what the best roles for each person to play are based on their cross-functional skill sets.
So is it sort of looking at what needs to be done and sort of factoring in, people to that so they know like what they can finish up in that list of tasks? So like matching the person to the tasks that need to be done kind of thing? Or
well, we kind of...
Everybody has this option to select from that list what they would like to do.
Yeah, that's correct, exactly right. The team members decide what they want to work on that will be able to help their team deliver value to the customer.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of good questions actually, so thanks for that. Another one, this is a good one. What productivity software or tools do you use or recommend to help team agility or teams become proper agile?
Okay. Yeah, it's a good one.
There's quite a few out there.
Yeah. So specifically productivity software.
Not a Gantt chart.
No, probably not a Gantt chart, probably not Microsoft Project too much, but we'll be looking more at tools that are a bit more lightweight and really easy to use, and less aligned with kind of metric of measuring teams, because measuring team would be more about working closely with the team and observing real actual work and seeing the deliverables that are coming out through the iteration. But things like we use Jira, for example, in order to maintain a single source of truth for our technical work. We use Slack for collaboration. We use something like Trello for some lightweight boarding. But a lot of what we use in our organization for managing the flow of information and the collaboration between teams and in teams and intra and inter is just physical boards on the wall which have the real work stuck on there with people's faces on it or initials and the number of hours they expect to have to do it.
And the traditional name for those is Kanban boards. If anyone watching hasn't used those or heard of those, look it up, Kanban boards. They're physical representations of the work you're doing, and it's a very simple doing and done, basically. And there can be several steps in between. Trello is software that represents that in a digital form. Like you said, physically, it's really good to have everyone around the board and being able to really visualize what everyone's doing.
So the key metrics that we would use in Agile, and a lot of people are kind of in the camp of kind of being agnostic to metrics, so I just want to call that out. But the typical metrics that we would use would be committed work versus done. So I'm not talking about committed hours versus done hours. I'm talking about committed user problems or user issues versus problems solved at the end of the sprint. So it doesn't matter so much to us if you've done 40 hours in a week. It's whether or not you've solved the customer's problem in that period.
So why would you probably opt for a physical board over a digital one? Or would you opt for physical? What are your preferences towards physical?
So there's pluses and minuses for both, right? So the default when you're starting out with an initial team would generally be, from a coaching perspective, from a Scrum Master perspective, would be a physical board. And the reason for that is that it enables us to get that key thing that I mentioned earlier, which is transparency. There's nothing more transparent than words written on a piece of paper that's stuck to a board, right, with somebody's name on it, with hours that need to be done. That tells us really what the problem is in our daily meetings, which we call a daily stand-up, in something like Scrum, for example. We'd go in, and the expectation is that I'm going to move that task, or whatever it is, into done after one day. And if I don't, then that signals to the rest of my team that maybe I got stuck with something, and maybe there's something that we can do to help each other to move that work through.
I think that's also my favorite feature of physical boards, is you really have an opportunity to go, okay, how can we help this person, or what is holding back the team? And the person moving the card is sort of, I wouldn't say under pressure, but they know what they need to commit to, and they can sort of explain the ins and outs of that problem. So it really spreads out the problem solving amongst the team.
So the drawbacks of a physical board are obviously things like it's not auditable, right? And that's important for some companies. So what we do in Global Payments AUNZ is we use a combination of physical and virtual. So we have a virtual Jira board where all of the technical work is auditable. Obviously, being a PCI compliant organization, that's something that's really important. But the majority of physical day-to-day task management is done in the physical sense. And the other great thing about the physical is that it's very visceral to take that task and move it into done, and for everybody to see you on a board and be like, yes, we achieved
something. It's boost productivity. It's really good for morale.
And probably the final thing for that is that it's really difficult, even if you have the best virtual board in the world, to get senior management or your MD to log into it and see what the teams are all actually working on. Whereas having your Kanbans up on display in your organization means that you can bring people into the organization, you can bring customers into the organization, they get a sense of the work that's being done in a really tangible, easy, physical way. And I guess the backhanded question would be, when's the last time you brought somebody in your organization to look at your Gantt chart? Right. So,
that's right. Excellent. Well, I think it's about time to wrap up. We're almost at 12. Thanks so much, Christian. It's been really insightful, and it's good. Even though I've been working in the Agile structure, it's always good to step back and see how it all works and what the ideas of behind Agile method is. I hope everyone has had a really good time listening. I hope we've covered everything, or covered a lot of stuff that's been really useful in your business or whatever you're doing, whatever projects you're running. We really hope that it's helped. And yeah, we look forward to running more of these webinars soon. So we hope you had a great time today. And we'll be recording this session. It's been recorded, so we'll put it up on our YouTube channels and our blogs. So you can go to easydebit.com or eway.com.au and keep an eye out on our blogs for the post. I'm sure we'll put it up shortly after. We'll also send a link after this. You can rewatch it through your email. And we might have slides as well made available to you as well. So if you want to just grab the slides instead of the video, we can do that too. But thanks again for watching, and we hope to see you soon. And keep an eye on your inboxes for our next webinar announcement, because I'm sure we'll have more exciting things to talk about.
So yeah, thanks everyone for watching us today and being a part. And yeah, look forward to hopefully seeing you all again in the future.
Great. See you all next time.